Welcome back to Pokemon Episode Summaries. Today, I'll be doing episode 299, Gone Core Vision. The episode begins with Team Rocket having arrived back on the Dewford Island beach after being blasted off last episode and likely landing somewhere in the water. But James and Meowth were very happy to have made it back and stated that now they were back, it was a good time to try and catch Ash's Pikachu again, as usual. Meowth and James were shouting with excitement so loud that their voices almost drowned out the sound of the waves crashing onto the beach. As for Jessie, she was currently relaxing on a lounge chair under an umbrella on the beach and stated that she just wanted to relax. She didn't even care about catching Pikachu at this point. And she continued to do so, relaxing in the shade with the help of her umbrella. Although she couldn't decide if she wanted to remove the umbrella or not and sunbathe instead of being in the shade. Her deliberations were soon cut off as Meowth and James yelled at her, demanding that she stop being lazy and help them catch Pikachu, but Jessie simply responded by taking a sip of her tropical orange juice that she had, stating her desire to just take it easy for the day. James and Meowth continued to yell at Jessie, although they soon spotted Wobbuffet having popped out of its Pokeball and noticed that it was lounging on another lounge chair as well, and they momentarily directed their anger towards it instead, suggesting that Wobbuffet should make itself useful and help them capture Pikachu as well. But Wobbuffet was too busy enjoying the sun and sunbathing as well. While they were fighting, however, something was approaching. A strange creature. It was speeding to the beach from the outskirts of the ocean. Jessie was getting sick of James yelling and his demands that they discuss strategies to capture Pikachu, so she finally decided to cave and began to state a plan to capture Pikachu when suddenly Jessie noticed the creature come from the water into the sand, and it soon rammed out of the sand and hit Team Rocket from below, sending Team Rocket blasting off into the sky, leaving the lawn chairs and the umbrella knocked over on the beach, as the creature then burrows back into the sand and goes back into the ocean, leaving no trace of its involvement. Later that day, after Team Rocket had blasted off, it was revealed that the beach that Team Rocket was on was actually part of the inlet that Steven had showed Ash and the gang for Ash to train at the end of last episode. The reason why Ash and the gang weren't there when Team Rocket was there was because they had retreated to the Pokemon Center to sleep for the night, but now they were back, with Ash and Pikachu ready to train, as the morning sun radiated over Dewford Island and a wave crashed behind Ash and Pikachu. Ash then cheerfully stated how the beautiful warm sun was perfect training conditions for his rematch against Brawly. Before Ash and Pikachu began training, though, Lotad went to the water and put some water in its lily pad and delivered it to Ash and Pikachu, and Ash and Pikachu proceeded to use it to wash their faces to make sure they were refreshed before training. As for May and Max, they were at a table they had set up on the inlet, brushing their teeth, while Brock and Torchic worked together, with Torchic starting a fire so Brock could start cooking a stew over a makeshift fire pit of stones. Yeah, that's right, a motherfucking stew for breakfast. Ash then begins training as he goes to the edge of the inlet and sends out his Trico and Talo, and the two Pokemon, along with Ash and Pikachu, all meditate together, with Ash explaining to his Pokemon the importance of meditating, and states that they should use the meditation time to envision themselves winning the match, to essentially try and make their vision become a reality. And also stated that they should just focus on concentrating on one specific thing at a time while they were meditating, because concentration would be very important for the rematch against Brawly. Basically, Ash wanted a technique of his own, being meditation, to counter Brawly's special technique of having his Pokemon redirect the force of their opponent's attacks with their surfing abilities. Basically, if Brawly had a technique, Ash wanted a special one as well. As for May and Max, May was watching Ash train and wondered what the fuck he was doing, meditating, as Max was washing clothes in a little bowl of water that he had set up, filled with water from Lotad. Fortress would then help Max, being sent out by Brock, as it would take all the clothes that Max gave it and would instantly dry them with Rapid Spin. Max would then thank Fortress and retrieve all the drier clothes and bring them to May for her to hang on the clothing line to fully finish drying and wait until the clothes were needed again. As May was hanging the clothes on the line, though, she couldn't keep her curiosity to herself and asked Brock and Max why Ash was doing meditating as his form of training. Admitting that she was surprised Ash considered it training because to her, meditation just looked like a person was sitting around doing nothing. Brock interrupted May's question before she could even finish it, though, as he didn't like May disrespecting meditation like that, as he informed her that it actually was a genuinely good training practice, since it helped Ash develop a calm mind and patience, which was necessary for Ash's battles, since he would need patience if his strategy wasn't working, and he would have to remain calm in dire situations. Brock also stated that meditation also helped with concentration, stating that Ash was likely trying to concentrate on the sound of approaching waves. This was definitely the case, as a huge wave then began to approach, as Brock was making some of his famous rice balls, and Talo began to freak out in nervousness at the wave. But Ash just told Talo to keep meditating, stating how learning to sense the waves might be the key to beating Brawly and his surfing techniques. Essentially, Ash figured that if he could learn to master the waves, then Brawly wouldn't be able to be as effective against him. Talo obliged, as it shut its eyes and continued to meditate, especially when Ash listened to the wave and determined that it was far enough away, so it was nothing to be concerned of. Soon enough, though, Ash was able to hear the wave grow larger and closer to them, so he ordered all of his Pokemon to get out of the way, but the wave was too quick, leaving Ash and his Pokemon soaked with water, even though they tried to run away, meaning that Ash still needed plenty of practice to be able to fully sense the waves, because he wasn't able to fully predict when it would arrive, otherwise he would have been able to dodge it fully. Anyways, when the wave receded, Ash saw that it wasn't just him who got hit by the wave, but Pikachu as well, as it was now covered in seaweed. But he orders them to try again with their meditation, stating that they would need this meditation technique to defeat Brawly properly. Before Ash can train, though, he notices May laughing at his failure, and also notices Brock, who was trying to tell him to hang up his wet clothes before he tried training again. So, he simply gave his clothes to May and Max to hang up and dry for him, making May and Max kind of ticked off, as they didn't understand why Ash was forcing them to do the laundry and was instead doing training that didn't appear to be helping at all. Brock understood their frustrations with Ash not doing the laundry, but he reminded May and Max that the meditation was definitely worth it if Ash could actually master it, stating that training didn't just have to be Pokemon battles. May and Max reluctantly take Ash's clothes and put them on the drying rack after Fortress dries them off, and Ash continues training, going back to the spot on the edge of the beach on the inlet. Sure enough, as Ash and the Pokemon were meditating, another huge wave approached, so Ash ordered them to run away in time this time, and Pikachu, Tailo, and Ash all successfully managed to get away from the wave in time, out of its range. However, Trico didn't react in time, not even moving an inch or opening its eyes, causing it to get hit. Only opening its eyes when the wave actually hit it. Max and May saw this, and noted how Trico's timing was off, informing Ash of this, making Ash angry, as he already fucking knew this, and he just wondered why Trico wasn't able to avoid the wave. Max suggested that maybe Trico wanted to learn how to take the attacks head-on, but May thought that Trico was just simply not fully trained yet, and suggested that Ash just train some more, but Ash stated that May was not one to talk about training, as she never trained for her Pokemon contest, suggesting that she should do that. And Max agreed, wanting his sister to do anything she could to get better, instead of wasting time, and offers to help her train. May simply rebuttals that, unlike Ash, she had been training successfully a little bit. Ash got angry at this little insult, and didn't believe May at all, so he simply just turned his attention to Trico instead, angry at May, as he watched Trico continue to get hit by wave after wave after wave, still not moving. Seeing how May and Ash were angry at each other, Brock tried to quell the situation by offering some tea to everyone. But nor May or Ash started drinking tea, as May was determined to prove to Ash that she actually was training for her contests, as she began to state what she had learned about contests from reading some guidebooks and from watching Janet's performance, which was that to impress the judges of the contest, one of the best ways to do this was to show off a good entrance, as she showed off her planned entrance for her first contest, which was to spin and dance around, which confused Ash and the gang as to how this dancing was supposed to earn May some points, as it was pretty fucking lame. And she then stated another important way to impress the judges: a Pokemon style and look, not just of their moves, but of the Pokemon themselves. So she sent out her Torchic and Wurmple to demonstrate this. However, Wurmple and Torchic didn't do as May was hoping, as they merely just played around, leading May to tell them that if they wanted to do good in Pokemon contests, then they had to learn to actually show off their look by being more graceful. And she proceeded to show them how to do this, as she did her dance routine of spinning around and shit, and told Torchic and Wurmple to follow, believing essentially that this dance routine would work for both her and her Pokemon to make them stand out. May quickly stops dancing, though, theorizing that the dancing must have been too complicated for Torchic and Wurmple to follow, and admits to herself that she probably didn't train Torchic and Wurmple as much as she thought, because she'd been focusing on learning about all this shit herself, but she didn't actually tell her Pokemon how to do any of it. Max saw another flaw in May's dancing routine with her Wurmple and Torchic, other than the fact that they weren't well trained, being that coordinators weren't allowed to let out two Pokemon at the same time in Pokemon contests, so that would already put May's idea to rest. Brock also saw yet another flaw with May's plan, stating that May shouldn't be dancing around. It should only be her Pokemon, since, unlike with gym battles, where the focus was mostly on the trainer and what they were able to command their Pokemon to do, with Pokemon contests, the judges were solely focused on the Pokemon and what they could do, not really how the trainers were moving around. Like, yeah, they cared about how the trainers were ordering their Pokemon and shit like that, but like they weren't actively judging how beautiful May was or how gracefully May was dancing, only the Pokemon. Upon hearing this, May admitted that she had forgotten about how she wasn't super important in the actual Pokemon contest, and was too focused on improving her actual dance skills, although bragged about how awesome they were. And she then also states that the reason why she was so hellbent on improving her dancing skills was because she had been inspired by both Steven and Brawly's movements when they battled. Essentially, you know how both Brawly and Steven were pretty, like, suave, and especially Steven when he was battling, he was just, like, super calm and shit like that, and then Brawly was, like, super suave when he was surfing and shit. Well, May had been inspired by this, so she wanted to teach her Pokemon some suave movements with her dancing. Ash was surprised to see that May had put that much thought into the dancing, and admitted that she was right to try and implement Steven's suave nature into her contest style, as Steven's suave nature could definitely help out with dancing. And admitted that although May had been more so training herself as opposed to her Pokemon, he did see that May was serious about Pokemon contests, and respected that. It was then revealed that Brock had set up a tent on the inlet, so that Ash and the gang wouldn't have to go back to the Pokemon Center every night, and they could stay at the inlet to continue training. However, they also noticed that this tent that Brock had set up began to move and walk away for some reason, leading Brock to suggest that there may have been something inside the tent making it move, as this thing also seemed to be ripping the tent a little bit. Ash and the gang quickly chase after the runaway tent, and Ash tries to have Pikachu use Thunderbolt to try and deal with whatever was inside the tent. However, Brock stops him, warning that if Ash used a Thunderbolt on the tent, it could set the tent on fire and destroy it completely, which was worse than it just being ripped. The thing inside the tent then crashes into a tree with the tent still on top of it, and tries to flee underground with the tent, but May tells Wurmple to stop it with a string shot, and the string shot does manage to grab a hold of the tent and whoever was inside of it, slowing them down. When May told Wurmple to reel the string shot in and bring the tent and whoever was inside of it closer to them, Wurmple struggled as the thing inside the tent fought back and was so fast that it was able to resist the string shot and pull Wurmple instead, as it continued along with the tent, dragging Wurmple. Trico finally stops sitting by the beach and goes to help Wurmple by grabbing it to pull it back. However, Trico just ends up getting pulled along as well, as the thing inside the tent continued to move along fast, dragging Wurmple with Trico holding on to Wurmple. Ash and the gang then all take action as they run up in front of Trico and Wurmple and grab Wurmple's string shot to try and pull Wurmple and Trico back, along with the tent, and whoever was inside it. But even with all their force, as they pulled the string back, the creature in the tent was too fast, as it caused them all to trip and fall, and therefore be dragged along as well. So now, the creature in the tent was dragging Ash, May, Brock, Max, Wurmple, and Trico. And eventually, the creature reaches the beach and drags them along the beach for a little while, until the creature broke free from the tent and dove into the water without revealing itself, as Ash and the gang couldn't see what the creature was, since they were of course thrown into the water as well when the creature went into the water. Although the force of the impact with the water did sever Wurmple's string shot. So, Ash and the gang, Wurmple, and Trico were no longer dragged along as the creature went deeper into the water, allowing Ash and the gang to come out of the water along with Trico and Wurmple and go back to their main site at the inlet, taking what remained of their ripped tent with them. And once they were all back at the inlet, they quickly took their clothes off and hung them up to dry, hanging up their bags to dry as well, as now all the food inside them was wet. Ash was covered in sand due to hitting the bottom of the ocean, where there was a whole bunch of sand. So ironically, he went back to the beach and dipped in the water a little bit to get all the sand off of him. And while Brock inspected the damaged tent at the inlet, Ash saw all the ruined rice balls that had fallen out of Brock's backpack when he was dragged across the beach, and returned them to Brock, although Brock was sad, as he couldn't do anything with them now, because they truly were ruined and wet. May then wrapped herself in a pink towel, and Max simply stayed in his undershirt to dry off his main jacket, while Brock got into a towel as well, waiting for his clothes to dry, as Ash and the gang turned their attention to who the fuck the culprit who dragged their tent and them along even was, wondering what the creature could have been. Ash suggested that a group of Diglets could have pulled them along, Brock thought a Krabby could have, and Max believed it was an Aeron. Brock eventually gave up on finding out the exact culprit, as he started to sew up the ripped tent, while exclaiming that all he knew was that a creature, or Pokemon, that could pull all of them like that must have been very strong, and Brock seemed impressed by this, although May was frightened by a Pokemon with this power. As for Ash, he was more of the same opinion of Brock, stating that he was impressed by the Corefish's power so much that he wanted to catch it for himself, and became confident that he could do so when Brock suggested that the Pokemon must have claimed this area as its territory, and that was why it felt threatened when Brock set up a tent, because it thought that someone was coming to invade his territory. Although, Ash just became more confident, because Brock stated that since this was the Pokemon's territory, it would likely return, so Ash saw that he would have another opportunity to catch it. May was adamantly against this, not wanting to mess with the potentially dangerous Pokemon. However, Brock stated that they would benefit from camping at the inlet, so that they wouldn't have to return to the Pokemon Center every day, and if they were going to be camping at the inlet, then they needed to know if they were going to have to face any problems when they were camping. So Brock was just like, you know what, maybe Ash catching it actually would be a good idea, because then it wouldn't be a threat to us anymore. So Brock agreed to help Ash, as did Max, as he wanted to see what the Pokemon was. And with that, Ash officially made up a plan with Max and Brock to find the mysterious Pokemon and catch it, making May sigh in annoyance, scared what might happen if the Pokemon were to reveal itself. Meanwhile, as for Team Rocket, they had blasted off to a cliff that was just above some palm trees. They were still recovering from that blast off, exclaiming how it hurt a whole bunch. As Team Rocket then began to wonder what the fuck even caused them to blast off in the first place, as they didn't see what it was. Jessie only knew that it was strong as fuck, and declared that she would do whatever it takes to find it again and get revenge on it for the hurt it had caused Team Rocket. Jessie then got distracted though, as Wobbuffet forcibly popped out of its Pokeball and walked to the edge of the cliff, almost falling off, forcing a very annoyed Jessie to go over to the edge of the cliff and recall Wobbuffet. However, when Jessie momentarily looked over the edge of the cliff, she sees the same creature in the sand that she spotted earlier, the one that had made Team Rocket blast off, and it was speeding up on the beach from underneath the sand, and she quickly pointed this out to Meowth and James, as the creature then smashed into a rock and changed direction to go away from this rock. Jessie took note of this and didn't want the creature to get away as it went the other direction, so she immediately went to jump off the cliff to take her revenge, speeding as fast as she could, not watching where she was stepping, although this backfired on her as she accidentally stepped on a sleeping Loudred that was on the cliff that she didn't notice, while she happened to be stepping over a small rock on the cliff. Upon being stepped on, the Loudred angrily woke up, causing Jessie to step back and freak out, worried as to what the angry Pokemon was going to do, although she didn't have much time to worry, as the Pokemon then let out an extremely angry, loud cry, sending Team Rocket blasting off from the sheer volume of the yelling. Later that night, back with Ash and the gang at the inlet, Brock had placed some Pokemon food by the tent to lure the creature in hopes that it would come back to get the food. So, Ash and the gang were hiding in some bushes, awaiting the Pokemon's return. Although, May quickly got tired and bored and stated that she wanted to go to bed, and that she was tired of waiting. Brock didn't really blame May for wanting to go to bed, as he admitted that the food that he placed as bait didn't seem to be attracting the Pokemon, as they'd been waiting for quite a long time. However, Ash refused to go to bed, not only because he wanted to catch the Pokemon, but because he felt like him waiting like this was helping him build his concentration and patience, which he needed for his rematch against Brawly. Max then sarcastically suggests that May should just go to sleep in the tent, because he knew that the Pokemon would likely show up in the tent. Although May didn't realize that Max was being sarcastic, and simply told him that she was way too scared to do that, as the Pokemon might attack her, as she proceeded to hug Max for protection, hugging him so tightly that he almost choked. However, May soon realized that Max was being a little sarcastic asshole, so she then purposely turned this hug into a choke. May was then about to turn this choke into a tackle to fucking murder Max in her anger. However, she was cut off as Pikachu then raised its ears as it heard something, leading Ash to come to the conclusion that Pikachu must have heard the creature and asked if Pikachu knew if it was close. Pikachu nodded, signaling that the creature was close, so May stopped choking Max to not make any sudden sounds, as Ash and the gang all looked out at the Pokemon food they placed by the tent as bait to see if the Pokemon would arrive. However, they waited for quite a while, and nothing came. So, they let their guard down, but this backfired on them, as shortly after this, Ash suddenly heard something behind him, but since he was caught so off guard, he wasn't able to warn everyone in time. So, the Pokemon, on its way to the food, came up behind Ash and the gang and hit them, sending them all flying back onto the beach. Ash and the gang were now semi-relieved, as they thought that the Pokemon would now just go for the food, but when it got to the food, it merely just pushed it away, seemingly not liking it, as it instead took more interest in going back to Ash and the gang, since it found more enjoyment sending people up into the air. Ash and the gang panicked when they saw the Pokemon continue to chase them, but they then got the idea to split up, because the Pokemon couldn't chase all four of them at once if they were all going in different directions, and this was true, as the Pokemon only chose one person to chase after, being May, as she ran away screaming for her life. Hearing May's screaming, Ash realized that the Pokemon had set its sights on May, and told Pikachu to help May out by attacking the Pokemon with a Thunderbolt. This Thunderbolt did in fact hit, but Ash wasn't able to catch it like he wanted, as the Pokemon escaped by digging a hole underground and escaping through the sand underground. Ash and the gang quickly ran up to the hole to see if they could see the Pokemon, but they found that it was already gone, and Ash then asked Pikachu if it could still sense the sound of the Pokemon, but Pikachu's ears were no longer tingling, meaning that it couldn't hear him. The Pokemon truly was far gone. And the next morning had already arrived by this point, and Ash and the gang were extremely tired since they hadn't gotten a wink of shut-eye that whole night. So they simply just went to the tent and laid against it in exhaustion, though not going inside, in fear that the Pokemon might show up and take the tent again. May was still so scared of the Pokemon, though, that she couldn't sleep despite her tiredness, and suggested that Ash not waste his time trying to catch the Pokemon, as she really wanted to move to another camping spot where they were safe from this bitch, questioning why they hadn't done so already. However, Ash instantly refused, leading May to angrily question why Ash wanted to catch something that almost fucking killed them. Ash still refused to give up on capturing the Pokemon, though, really determined to catch the Pokemon, while Brock and Max were in the same boat as Ash, really wanting to find out what the Pokemon was. And Brock also admitted that he didn't want to give up on finding out what the Pokemon was, as they had already came relatively close to catching it, knowing that Pikachu's Thunderbolt would do quite a bit of damage to the Pokemon, suggesting that they use Pikachu's Thunderbolt to their advantage, as opposed to a food trap, because that didn't work before. And Ash agreed, stating that he would change up his strategy a bit for catching the Pokemon by actually being prepared for it this time, and being able to instantly have Pikachu use Thunderbolt, instead of waiting for when May was being chased. With the plan decided, Ash and Brock and Max got back to debating what the Pokemon could even be, leading Ash to reveal that he saw 3 brownish-red spikes come out from the sand when Pikachu attacked it with Thunderbolt. And because of these reddish-brownish horns, he figured that the Pokemon may be a pair of Sandslash. Max was intrigued upon the possibility of the Pokemon being a pair of Sandslash, as he stated that he had heard about a Sandslash after he learned about it from Professor Oak's Pokemon Guide. May was confused, not knowing that Oak gave out his knowledge for free, but Max proved this by pulling out Professor Oak's Pokemon Guide and bragging about how he had acquired one. Ash, hoping that the Pokemon could be a Sandslash or something even better as well, was confident that the Pokemon would eventually come back, as he quoted one of Professor Oak's famous poems, which was, "If it happened once, it happened once more," referring to the fact that if the Pokemon appeared once, it would likely appear again. May questioned what the fuck that poem was from, and why Ash was interested in poems, as she certainly didn't expect that from someone like him, making Max extremely angry, as he revealed that Professor Oak's guidebook also had a whole bunch of his poems written in it, including the one that Ash had just recited, and Max was very angry upon May not knowing about Professor Oak's poems, as he figured that everyone should. Ash and the gang then came to a realization that the Thunderbolt may not actually be enough to help Ash capture the Pokemon, as the Thunderbolt caused the Pokemon to try and run away, and Ash obviously didn't want that to happen again, because, he worried that even if he was prepared and set off a Thunderbolt right away, the Pokemon would still scurry away. So he came up with a different plan with the help of Brock, as Ash and the gang then went to the beach, and Brock sent out his fortress and had it dig holes in the sand with Rapid Spin that were all relatively huge. Brock thanked Fortress for the assistance, but clarified that this wasn't enough holes, and told Fortress to dig some more, as Fortress obliged. Max and May were confused by what this plan was, and what was so good about it, leading Ash to explain that they were gonna use a classic pitfall trap to capture the Pokemon, explaining that when the Pokemon inevitably tried to chase Ash and the gang, it would be stopped in its tracks by falling into these holes. Ash then ordered Max and May to help him and Brock cover the holes with leaves and sand to disguise them, and May and Max obliged, although they admitted their skepticism in the plan, since they didn't think it would work, reminding Ash and Brock of how Team Rocket did pitfall traps all the time, and they never worked. Brock and Ash assured May and Max that their pitfall traps would actually work, though, unlike Team Rocket's stupid ones, since Ash and Brock had been victim to Team Rocket's holes for so long that they knew what would make a trap hole actually effective. However, May and Max simply replied that even if they knew how to make better holes than Team Rocket, they should just stay away from anything Team Rocket related, stating that Ash and Brock must have clearly reached a low point in their idea brainstorming if they were willing to use one of Team Rocket's ideas and copy their plans, once again expressing their doubt that the hole would actually work. By the time night arrived once again, Brock had mixed up a different kind of Pokemon food, because he realized that even though the Pokemon didn't like the first type he made, he could still try another one. So, with that, he decided to place a whole bunch of the food on the holes so that it could potentially attract the Pokemon to the holes. Once this was done, Brock bragged about this genius idea of putting food on the holes, as Ash and the gang eagerly waited in the bushes again for the Pokemon to arrive. And after some waiting, Ash soon spotted 4 large bunches of seaweed emerge from the water and walk up and start to eat the Pokemon food that was just outside of the hole, as Brock had placed some outside the hole as well as inside. Ash told everyone about this, leading Brock to get excited that his plan was working. Although May pointed out that she wasn't exactly sure that the plan was working, as the creature they were looking for clearly wasn't a batch of seaweed, or multiple batches of seaweed for that matter. So upon hearing this, Ash and the gang realized that the batches of seaweed must not have been who they were looking for, but they were still curious as to there being seemingly alive batches of seaweed. That was fucking interesting. So interesting that as the seaweed bunches were happily eating, Brock quickly emerged from the bushes while the seaweed bunches were distracted with the eating, and placed a bowl of food on a nearby rock to lure them to it, as that was the closest hole nearby, as the food that they had arrived at wasn't immediately next to a hole. So basically Brock just wanted to get them closer to one. Soon enough, one of the seaweed bunches noticed the new food and went towards it, motioning for the other bunches to come along, and they all did, only to fall into the hole, leaving Ash and the gang to eagerly go up to the hole to see what creatures they had caught. Much to Ash and the gang's dismay, though, they then hear the creatures, quote-unquote, talking about and complaining about how they fell in someone else's hole for once, and then noticed that Ash and the gang had arrived at the hole and pointed them out, recognizing them, as they took off their seaweed disguises. Yeah, that's right, I said seaweed disguises, because these weren't actually creatures, it was Team Rocket in disguise. Team Rocket then proceeded to do their motto, still complaining about how they were the only ones allowed to dig holes, not Ash and the gang, but May and Max cut Team Rocket's motto off, making fun of them for covering themselves in fucking seaweed and eating Pokemon food instead of real food. Well, at least in Jesse and James' case. Obviously it was okay for Meowth and Wobbuffet to eat Pokemon food, but, you know, Team Rocket were admittedly ashamed by doing this shit, as they cowered in their hole, ducking in embarrassment. But they admitted that they had to do what they had to do, as they wanted a way to get up to the beach to try and find the creature themselves without Ash and the gang noticing them. So they were like, oh, we might as well disguise ourselves as seaweed. And they figured maybe that if they ate the Pokemon food, then the Pokemon may get mad, and therefore come out. Well, I'm sure Team Rocket was happy then, as the Pokemon did come out from the bottom of the hole that Team Rocket happened to be in, somehow getting inside the hole, and as soon as it smashed into them, this sent Team Rocket blasting off. Brock then got excited, as he realized that the creature must have liked his new food after all, as it instantly climbed up the side of the pitfall, still buried in some sand, not revealing itself, as it then went through the sand in the beach toward the food. But Pikachu stopped it in its tracks, using Quick Attack to stop it and knock it out of the sand, revealing it as a Corphish as it landed with a thud. Ash knew it was a Corphish because he recognized it from when he had fished one up 2 episodes ago, and it got away. But despite knowing that it was a Corphish, he still decided to use his Pokedex on it to learn more about it, and this proved to be beneficial, as the Pokedex mentioned Corphish's territorial nature and its aggressive personality, which were 2 very classic traits of Torchic, and Brock realized that due to Corphish's territorial nature and aggressive personality, it was attacking everything and everyone standing in its way to protect its territory. Brock then suggested that Ash should definitely catch the Corphish because its speed and power would be perfect for his rematch against Brawly, and Ash agreed with this, fully aware of Corphish's incredible speed and power and wanting it for himself. So he sent out Pikachu, as Corphish finally got up from Pikachu's previous Quick Attack. Max was very confident that Ash could catch the Corphish, as Corphish was at a disadvantage due to Pikachu being an electric type and Corphish being a water type. However, this was proved not to be so simple of a battle, as Pikachu started off with a super effective Thunderbolt, but Corphish was able to dodge and then use Bubble Beam, damaging Pikachu and catching it off guard, allowing Corphish to burrow into the sand once again to escape, leaving Pikachu confused as to where Corphish went. So it simply tried to locate Corphish, but it couldn't before Corphish revealed itself, emerging from under the sand as it struck Pikachu hard with a Crab Hammer attack, sending Pikachu flying into the air, leading Pikachu to try and use Iron Tail on the Corphish as Pikachu fell to the ground, but Corphish merely caught Pikachu's tail with a vice grip and threw Pikachu straight for Ash, sending both Ash and Pikachu flying back, with Pikachu landing on top of Ash, right by his face, and therefore exhausting Pikachu. Upon seeing the damage that Pikachu had sustained, Brock realized that Corphish actually used Pikachu's speed and power against him to topple Pikachu away. Essentially, it used the force of Pikachu's attacks against it, and Brock remarked how Corphish was stronger than he thought, and warned Ash that he had a massive challenge on his hands. Ash agreed with this, but was confident that his Trico could do the job of weakening the Corphish so that he could catch it, as he told Trico that he was now putting all of his trust in it, and told his Pikachu to go back to Brock, May, and Max to relax. Ash then instructed Trico to meditate and wait for Corphish to attack, as Trico obliged, closing its eyes and simply standing there. Max and May obviously didn't think that Ash having Trico meditate was a good idea, since it had failed to meditate successfully and avoid the waves, but Brock reassured them that he was sure Ash had a plan and knew what he was doing, and complimented Ash on this supposed plan. Suddenly, as Trico just stood there and Corfish waited for Trico to attack, the sun began to rise, and Corfish became bored of waiting, so it went to attack with Bubble Beam. This was just what Ash wanted, as now the Corfish was rambunctious and ready to attack, while Trico was still calm, so he could use its calmness to his advantage, as Ash just told Trico to hit the bubbles away, as it used Pound to do so, bursting the bubbles. Just as Ash suspected, Corfish began to get angry at the bubbles being popped, and because he was super angry, it was even more or less focused. So, when Corfish went to use an angry crab hammer, Trico simply went in with a calm quick attack, sending Corfish flying. And while Corfish was in the air, Trico then struck Corfish with a final Pound attack, knocking Corfish down to the ground, allowing Ash to throw a Pokeball. And the Pokeball shook for a long-ass fucking time, but it successfully caught Corfish, ending the suspense that Ash was feeling, as he then picked up the Pokeball and did his classic, "Yeah, I did it" pose, happy that he finally caught a new home Pokemon, Corfish. Ash then thanked Trico for its help, while May, Brock, and Max congratulated Ash on his new capture, with Brock commending Ash on his strategy of using Corfish's own impatience against him, while Max and May commended Ash for learning his lesson from his loss at the Dewford City Gym, and learning how to be calm as opposed to super rambunctious and hyper and just out of control, stating their belief that Ash would have lost if he wasn't calm. Ash then sent out his new Corfish and kneeled down to it, introducing himself, stating that he hopes to train it well. Ash then offered his hand out for Corfish to shake, and Corfish smiled as it happily shook Ash's hand, impressed with Ash's ability to catch it. However, Corfish was too strong and ended up shaking Ash's hand so hard that he ended up throwing Ash behind him, lifting him over him, making everyone laugh at Corfish's overwhelming strength before going over to check if Ash was okay. The episode then ends with Ash getting up and happily talking with his new Pokemon Corfish some more. Ash finally had his third home Pokemon.